Okay, so welcome back to the next lecture, that is 34th lecture, and as you remember in the previous lecture we talked about the reward system, okay, and that is where we discussed that you need to develop a reward system which is going to be appropriate for the employees, where employees feel that this reward is valuable, so that they are motivated for higher performance. So, when we are going to design a reward system for organizations and you really want to link with the performance, we have to see that it is motivating in nature, right. Because if people are not motivated to perform at a higher level, then you cannot expect better performance, and then whatever system you design, because the reward ultimately leads to motivation. So, what I am discussing here is what I am trying to tell you here is that we are talking about, we just discussed this factor, that effort, performance, okay, reward, and all this is related to what you call motivation. So, you expect this motivation, okay. So, effort leads to performance, performance leads to reward, and then reward lead to what you call motivation to put in again more effort. So, it is a cyclic in nature, right. So, and you are going to design a compensation structure which is based on performance. Now, we have to see that how we can design a compensation structure which is based on performance. Okay. So, basically we have to see that how we can motivate employees through incentives or providing them financial or non-financial rewards, ensuring that that is intrinsically or extrinsically satisfied, and all this depends upon the needs and expectations of the employees, right. So, that is the first part. In this part we will discuss some of the mechanism that talks about how organizations link their performance with the pay, right. So, what we are going to discuss in this section is performance linked reward system, and here we will look into some of the issues and some of the mechanism that has been adopted by the organization to link performance with the reward. Now, when we are going to link performance with the reward, see that is what we have been talking about. Now, if you look at these 6 cells, you will find 4 cells, it talks about 2 factors. One is variability in the organizational performance, okay, and variability and ease of measuring performance of the individual, right. So, you can have variability in the performance of the organization, either it is going to be very high or very low, right, because performance is variable, right. You cannot expect consistent performance across time, right. Similarly, if you look at performance of the individual, that is also that is expected to be consistent, but there could be a variability. Okay. So, this variability is derived from where, especially when you are looking in measuring the individual performance, right. If you have stable and easily measured performance level, then the variability is less, but if they are unstable, unclear and changing objectives related to the performance and its measurement both, then the variability is very high, right. Now, low variability in performance means that it does not change, overall corporate performance is more or less consistent, it does not change much. High variability means there is a larger swings in the corporate performance. Okay. So, maybe first quarter it is very good, second quarter again it is bad, third quarter it improves slightly, and then fourth quarter it goes back again. So, if there is a high variability in organizational performance, then what happens? Okay. Now, if you look at these 4 quadrants, that is cell A, B, C and D, you will find that when we are trying to link performance with compensation, what happens along these 2 dimensions of variability in performance of the organization and individual, because individual performance need to be linked with organizational performance, right, because individual contributes to organizational performance. Now, if you look at this and look at the first cell, that is cell A, and here you are talking about low variability. Okay. It means organizational performance is more or less consistent, it does not change much, okay. But individual performance is unstable, okay, because the performance level is changing or the objectives of the performance is changing, or for whatever reason it is not very stable. Okay. It means that there is a high variability. Okay. So, what kind of reward system is to be used here? Okay. So, if you are going to use only money, then it is not very effective. Okay. So, you have to see that what kind of incentives can be used to motivate employees to perform better, right. Similarly, if there is a high variability at the individual level, but low variability at the individual level and high variability in the performance, then again you are going to use those rewards which are going to be satisfying in nature to the individual. Okay. Similar financial or monetary reward or extrinsic rewards are not going to be very satisfied. Okay. Right. Now, if you look at cell C, where you take look at low variability and high stability in individual performance, right. It means that individual performance is stable, organizational performance is also consistent. Here you can go for providing monetary rewards, including incentives, because both of them are doing well, right. And then you can go for profit sharing and these kind of things. Okay. Now, look at cell D, where you find high variability in organizational performance, but individual performance is more or less stable. Means here again you can use monetary rewards, okay, basically pay and all these kind of salary increase and these kind of things, which is going to be satisfying in nature. Now, this if you look at these quadrants, it is based on the performance of the individual as well as performance of the organization, because ultimately as a individual you are going to perform, you are going to link it with organizational performance. Okay. So, if organization is going to perform well, only then it is going to reward you well, right. And if organizational performance is not good, then the kind of reward mechanism that is coming would be different, right. So, we have to see that when you are going to design a compensation structure or a reward system for that matter, you look into both the individual performance and organizational performance, because if organization is not able to perform well, then you are going to provide more incentives to the individual. If it is going to perform well, then you move to organizational level performance sharing, like profit sharing, gain sharing. Okay. But if it is not performing well, then you apply individual level performance criteria, right, like giving incentives to individual who are performing well, not everybody. So, if everybody is performing well, organization is also doing well, then you move to organizational wide reward system, otherwise you move to individual or group wise reward system. So, that is the basic objective of discussing this, right. So, when you are going to design a pay for performance plan, okay, it is based on what? Two factors, efficiency and equity, and also compliance. Because if you look at compensation structure, basically the idea of devising a good compensation structure is that it brings efficiency into the system. It means people work efficiently to produce more, which could be linked with the reward, right. Now, when you are talking about efficiency, bringing in more efficiency, that is basically related to improving your operational efficiency at the workplace, right. Because if you are going to increase your operational efficiency, it would result in better performance, right, more productivity, right, because efficiency is linked to higher productivity. Now, in order to bring higher level of efficiency, you need to design your strategy and structure in such a way, so that it supports higher productivity, right. So, you have to see that what would be your strategy for increasing your efficiency, okay, right, and what kind of structure you have in place. I am talking about the organizational structure. Okay. So, ensure that your strategy and structure is aligned with each other, okay, which leads to greater operational efficiency, increasing in increased quality, productivity, okay, and all kind of things. And then when it comes to measuring performance, you also have standards. Performance standards are very clear. Okay. So, you identify the objectives, you have measures for performance, you see that who is eligible for what, okay, and from where the money will come. For example, suppose you are going for a group based incentive, say Gainsharing plan, right. So, what is your what is the basic objective of this Gainsharing plan? The Gainsharing plan actually is going to help a group who is going to work on a particular issue, and suppose this group is going to solve a problem because of which the quality of the product has improved, and because of this improved quality there has been revenue gains, right. And this revenue gain is going to be shared between the employer and the employees. Now, some of the questions that you are going to look at is that what kind of performance standards you are looking forward to in terms of quality. Okay. So, you need to define about the quality standards, which is leading to increased gain, right. You also see that how you are going to measure this, how much gain has been there, who is eligible for this kind of gain, and how it is going to be shared, how it will be funded, right. But before this you also need to discuss about the strategy, what would be your strategy in gain sharing, how it will be structured, right, which brings efficiency. So, when we are talking about efficiency, the basic objective is that you are going to see that you are going to have more output with less input, right. It means that increased efficiency. Your efficiency would increase only when your quality improves, your productivity goes up, okay, downtime is less, right. It means that these are the some of the indicators of efficiency. So, you need to develop a strategy, make sure that your structure facilitates. You also define standards of efficiency. Okay. This is the level of efficiency that you want to achieve, and then you see that how it is to be measured, who will be eligible for the gain because of this efficiency that has been achieved, and how it will be shared between the employer and the employees, right. That is the first part. Now, you look at the second part. Okay. When you are going to design a performance based pay plan, you also need to look at some other factors like equity, okay, or fairness. Make sure that those who are performing well, they are going to be paid well, whether you are talking about financial performance or whether you are going to talk about non financial performance, rewards, right. So, where it does not matter what is the reward, but make sure that you follow the principles of justice and fairness in rewarding employees, so that you are able to discriminate and differentiate between high performing employees and low performing employees. So, you first follow certain equity principles. Equity principles suggest what? That you have to be just and fair in allocating rewards to the employees. Okay. So, you need to identify certain standards, okay. And here two kind of justice is very, very important, that is distributive justice and procedural justice. Distributive justice, that is how we are going to allocate rewards, and procedural justice is that what processes you are going to follow to distribute rewards. Okay. So, at the first place when you are going to talk about distributive justice, you have to see that you are going to distribute justice or distribute reward based upon the level of performance, right. But now, the question is that how do you decide about the level of performance, right. And here comes the procedural justice, that what processes you have identified to distribute the rewards, who will be rewarded more and who will be rewarded less. For example, suppose we are talking about the piece rate of system, okay, and you say that you are going to follow piece rate of system to distribute rewards. Okay. So, what will happen? Those who are going to produce more, they are going to be rewarded better. If you follow equity principle, it means you are talking about distributive justice, right. So, suppose a person is producing x units and or say 10 units and the rate per unit is 100 rupees. So, 100 multiplied by 10, right. So, this is the equity part. It means that depending upon the number of units that you are going to produce, you are going to be rewarded. Okay. So, this is how the reward is going to be distributed. Now, another issue is that how you decide that okay, this would be the process. What is the process? How do you decide that okay, the rate per piece is going to be 100 rupees, that is to be justified, right. So that you are fair in distribution of reward. In addition to this equity and fairness issues, you also look into other issues like compliances, legal issues. It means you know that you need to follow certain performance based laws, reward based laws, right. For example, in Indian context, you have Minimum Wages Act, right, Equal Remuneration Act, Payment of Wages Act, Payment of Bonus Act. So, you need to comply with these existing laws in Indian context, because if you are going to comply with these kind of say wage laws, then what will happen? You will be able to maintain the reputation of the firm, that is, you are complying with all the statutory norms of the state or the country while deciding about the compensation structure of the organization, right. So, efficiency and equity and compliance, these are the three factors which is important in designing the pay. Now, moving further is that what are the different kind of pay for performance plans that is given by the organizations, right. Now, what actually happens when you are going to have a performance based plan, that is depending upon the performance of the individual, the pay varies, right. So, it says that pay that varies with some measures of individual or organizational performance, right. So, any kind of performance based pay plan is going to be variable in nature. If there is a variation in the performance, there is going to be variation in the reward, right. Why you are going to discriminate based on performance, reward based on performance, is that you want to motivate who are performing well, so that they can sustain that level of performance. Similarly, you also want to motivate those who are not performing well to move to higher level of performance, so that they could get better reward, right. So, the idea is that when you design a pay for performance based structure, you make sure that it is having a positive effect on the performance. Now, if you look at this with different kind of variable pay plans, it include merit pay, lump sum increase in the bonus, okay, individual incentives or group incentives. Okay. So, what we are going to talk about here is the different kind of schemes which are planned by the organization. So, we move with the first one, that is merit based pay. Merit based pay is that where you have annual pay increase, okay, linked to your performance appraisal rating, right. So, now you look, if you look at this data, you can see that this is known as merit increase grid. Now, what is this merit increase grid? Okay. So, you look at the performance of the employees and how much increase is there in the performance, and accordingly you decide what would be the pay or the salary of the employees, right. So, merit increase grid basically is a grid that combines performance ratings with the position or the pay range to determine the size and frequency of his pay or increase in the pay, right. Now, if you look at this, the performance is being measured at 4 different levels, that is unsatisfactory, satisfactory, very good and excellent. Okay. Now, at each quartile you are going to measure the performance, right. So, the first quartile what happens, second quartile what happens, third quartile what happens, and the fourth quartile what happens. Okay. So, you will find that fourth quartile what happens, from 1% from unsatisfactory performance it leads to, it is moved to 3%. Okay. Similarly, third quartile it moves from 0 to 2 to 3 to 4. It means there is an increasing progression, okay, from unsatisfactory to excellent performance, okay, depending upon the salary that you have. So, the position in the salary range. Okay. Now, the idea is that if you perform well, you are going to be rewarded accordingly. Okay. And this is decided by the organization, that how much increase is going to be there in your reward, and this is prefixed sometimes, or the employee also know that okay, if he is going to perform at this level, what would be his reward, right. So, this is what we know as merit based pay. Merit based means if you are performing better, then you are going to pay better, right, and it is administrative decision which is linked with your performance appraisal data. So, based upon your performance records, the organization decides that how much increase is going to be there in your salary on an annual basis, right. So, moving from a merit increase, we have to see that what are the other systems, but before we move to other systems, we have to see what are the criticism of this kind of merit based pay programs. Okay. What is actually happening here, that you are going to rate individual performance, but the individual performance is also dependent on other factors which is not being considered. Okay. For whatever reasons, if the individual is not able to perform well, then he is not going to get any kind of merit increase, right. Now, since it is based on individual performance, it is going to discourage basically teamwork, because everybody would like to look at his performance and would like to make effort to improve his performance. So, if you are working as a team and if you are not following team performance norms and you are going to reward individually each one of them, then everybody would be concerned about his performance in the team, not the overall performance of the team. So, this basically discourages teamwork. Okay. And that is why you should not go for merit based pay program for team, right. It could be more suitable for individuals, right. Now, another issue that comes out is that when you are going to decide about merit based program, who is going to do this kind of rating? It is done by the supervisors, right. So, if you are going to only rely on supervisors for ratings of the individual performance, okay, and if supervisor is biased, is not been able to rate accurately, then what happens? Okay. Intentionally or unintentionally, sometimes supervisors are biased or make certain errors in their ratings. So, if they are going to make their some errors in the rating of the performance, the person is going to be affected. Okay. So, if you are going to exclusively rely on supervisor for performance rating, then it is not going to help the individual, because in that case you are not going to properly or accurately rate his performance and link it with the individual's performance, right. Similarly, if you are going to increase the merit and that is not very valuable or it is insignificant or too small, then again it is not going to motivate employees for higher performance. So, the idea here is that when you are going to decide about merit based program, keep certain things in mind, that is, you look at individual performance, that is okay, but do not only rely upon supervisors rating, you also ensure that the rating that is given by the supervisor is correct, and that is why you remember we talked about training of the supervisors, so that they do not go for any kind of biases, unintentional or intentional, and make sure that these kind of increases are significant, because if it is insignificant, that then it is not going to motivate employees for higher performance, right. Sometimes what happens, this merit pay lead to an entitlement mentality. What I am trying to tell you here is, what is this entitlement mentality? Suppose I have got some kind of increase, then next year again I expect that okay, this is my entitlement, I must get some kind of increase in my pay. Okay. So, if you are rewarding individually, every time he is performing well, he expects better rewards. So, this leads to some kind of mentality where you feel that yes, you are entitled because you have performed well, whether the organization is in a position to provide you reward or not. Okay. So, these are some of the issues because of which this merit based pay programs have been criticized traditionally. Now, moving from this, we are talking about individual incentive plans. Okay. So, individual incentives, as I told you earlier, also is based upon your productivity. So, productivity is linked with pay, right. Now, if you look at this, there are different kind of plans that have been discussed, how the rate is determined. Okay. So, there are two principles that is followed, based on time, okay, and based on units that is produced, right. So, unit of production per time period and time period per unit of production, right. Now, if you look at this, you suppose you are going for piece rate of production, okay, that is nothing else but what you call units of production per time period, right. So, you follow a straight piecework plan. What I am trying to tell you here is that you decide the rate per piece, you see how much he has produced, and then you multiply the number of units with the rate, and then you decide the increase, the incentives that the individual is going to have. Second is that you also look at the number of hours the individual has worked, okay, and then what you decide, what would be the rate per hour, and then the rate per hour plus the number of hours that the individual has worked is multiplied, and then you decide what would be his incentives, right. Now, this is basically where you are trying to link pay with the productivity, right. Now, since pay varies because of the production, what happens? Okay. So, you go for differential piece rate systems. What is differential piece rate systems? That is, up to a certain level you have one rate, if beyond that level you are going to increase the rate. For example, you think that okay, beyond the standard performance, if he is going to produce 5 units, the rate would be 10 rupees. From 6 to 10, you are going to have 20 rupees. If he is producing beyond 10 units, then the rate would be going to be 25 rupees. Okay. So, you are adopting a differential piece rate system. Okay. So, whether you adopt it from Taylor or Merrick, the idea here is that the productivity, if you are going for increased productivity level, your pay varies. Okay. But there is a differential system because you identify that what would be the piece rate per system at certain levels, right. And standard hour plan happens, what happens if you look at this where you are going for variations, suppose you also say that the time period per unit of production, right. Here you are not keeping in mind the number of units that is produced, but you say okay, if you work for these hours and if you are going to work for extra hours, okay, how much you are going to pay. Okay, so, you adopt a 50-50. Okay. You decide what would be the standard of payment for extra hour that the individual has worked, and accordingly you decide what would be his increase as individual incentives, right. Now, what next we are going to discuss is different type of variable pay plans. Since we are talking about pay for performance and pay for performance is always variable in nature, we have to ensure that we are going to follow this kind of system to better motivate people for higher performance, which is linked with higher rewards, right. So, when you are going to design a variable pay compensation, in addition to the performance standards and constant pay that the individual is getting, right. So, there could be different kind of incentives. We talked about individual incentives, there could be group incentives, okay. There could be stock ownership, balance scorecard or gain sharing, okay, or cash profit sharing also. So, these are the different kind of incentives that could be given to individuals, groups, even at the organization also. So, here we are talking about different kind of systems that organizations design at individual, group and organization level, right. Now, if you look at this picture, you find a carrot which is going to attract individual. So, he will be motivated to that in order to perform well. Now, the idea is that what mechanism you are going to use in order to ensure that this variable plan, which is linked with performance and reward, is going to be more successful and effective. Now, what we are going to do is discuss it one by one, like team or group incentive plans, right. Now, first of all we are going to discuss about gain sharing plan. What is gain sharing? Right. Now, if you look at this gain sharing plan, it talks about the gain which is achieved by a group of employees. They could belong to a particular department or unit, or they would might be working for a particular project, right. So, what exactly happens in a gain sharing plan is something like this. Suppose there is a gain sharing. Now, in this gain sharing what happens is that suppose there is a group of employees working with the say quality department, right, and the rate of rejection was 4%. Now, because of their effort they have been able to improve the product. So, the rate of rejection has gone down to 1%, right. It means the gain is 3%. Okay. So, you are able to improve the quality of the product, right. Now, this gain that has been achieved has to be translated into monetary terms, that how much it translates into monetary terms. suppose you think that with 4% rate rejections of the quality of the product, you have been losing say 20,000 rupees. That is a hypothetical example I am giving, right. So, if there is a 1%, then you are only going to lose 5,000. Okay. It means you have been saving 15,000 because of the improved quality of the product. Now, this 15,000 that has come out, this is the gain for the organization, which is made by a group of employees now, right. So, this is what gain sharing is. Now, this 15,000 is to be shared between the employer and the employees, right. So, this gain sharing, you identify the formula for sharing the gain. Now, this gain is to be shared between a set of employees who have worked for improving the quality, others will not be a part of it, and that is why we call it a team or group incentive plans. Now, this formula could be 40-60, 40% will go to employees, 60% will go to the employer, or it could be 30-70, or it could be 50-50 also. What I am trying to tell you is that whatever formula you adopt, make sure that it is acceptable to both the employers and the employees, right. And accordingly, the revenue that is generated or the revenue that is gained because of this improved quality process has to be shared between the employees and the employers, right. So, you decide about the formula that is going to be acceptable. Suppose it is 40-60, so they will get 6,000 and then employees will get 9,000. So, suppose there are 9 employees, so each employees will get an additional increase in the salary, that is going to be 1,000 rupees, right. So, that is how the gain sharing works. Okay. Now, in addition to gain sharing, we also have another concept that is known as profit sharing. Profit sharing is an organizational wide plan. Okay. So, if whatever profit is made by the organization, that is shared with all employees. So, this is the difference between profit sharing and gain sharing, right. Is profit sharing is an organization wide plan where all employees is going to share the profit. Suppose organization has made a profit of 10%, right. So, part of that would be shared with the employees, right. But in gain sharing, only those employees who have worked for that particular thing, and because of that there has been some revenue generation. So, that extra revenue that is generated or that is saved, whatever it is going to be shared between the group of employees and the organization. So, we talked about gain sharing plan and profit sharing, right. Then earning at risk plans. This is the incentive, again it is related to profit sharing only. Okay. So, but it changes depending upon how much profit you are making. If you are making more profit, then you are successful, but if you are not making profit, then you are at risk, because in that case your earning is going to be changed or it is going to be on the downside, right. So, suppose in a particular year organization has made better profit, then organizational employees are going to gain more, or they are going to be the extra revenue that is generated by the organization would be shared in a better way. But suppose next year the organization has not made profit, that much profit, then this kind of sharing would be less. So, it is at risk. It means that profit sharing sometimes is good and sometimes may not be good. Then another important incentive plan that is used by the organization is ownership, right, that is stock option. So, employee ownership plan that gives employees the opportunity to buy the company's stock at a fixed price. Okay. So, depending upon the stock, what actually happens, the number of stocks that the employees had, the value of that stock goes up or down. Okay. It depends upon the market actually, right. So, if you are talking about ESOP, it is a very popular method, and many IT companies or manufacturing companies use this. Okay, to they provide stock ownership to their employees, and this is also exempted from tax and other kind of things. Okay, because it is in the form of money, digital money, because unless you cash it, you are not going to pay taxes to that, right. So, and this employee stock ownership actually is used to motivate employees. Okay. So, you know that you feel a part of the employees, so you go for better performance, right, and that is why these kind of incentive plans have been designed by the organization, right. Then we have balanced scorecard. Balanced scorecard is another method that could be used for measuring the performance of the employees. Okay. especially from the different perspectives like internal customers, external customers, employees and stakeholders, and see what is happening, who is making profit, right. So, this balanced scorecard approach is also used for measuring performance of the employees, okay, and then it could be used for devising a suitable reward mechanism depending upon the level of performance that has been made by the company, okay, using different stakeholders, right, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, employees, right, and the shareholders. Now, we have to say that how this profit linked plan is better or worse compared to other financial remunerations like salary, right. See, if you look at salary, it is structured, it is paid in a definite cycle, while when we are talking about performance linked plan, it is not related to monthly, quarterly or yearly, it depends upon when you perform well, right. Now, if you look at bonus, bonus is also paid yearly or half yearly, because as per the government laws it has to be paid, okay. But when we are talking about performance linked incentives, it depends upon the performance of the individual, and you decide how much you are going to increase the salary of the individual, right, irrespective of the performance of the individual. Then we also have retention bonus, right, whether you want to retain high performing employees, so you give them extra salary, extra bonus, okay. So, these retention bonus is given for a period that employees stay back in the organization. So, basically want him to stay back with the organization, okay, because he is going to add some kind of value, okay. It is not related to basically effort that he is making for higher performance, but since you want him to stay back, you want to retain him with the organization, so you go for retention bonus, right. So, it could be paid yearly, half yearly, okay, and the idea is that you want to stay back, you want employees to stay back in the organization, and that is why if you are going for performance linked pay, it is much better than other financial remunerations that you are using to motivate employees. So, the objective of whether you are going for financial remuneration or performance linked pay, the objective in both cases is to motivate employees for higher performance, right. Now, finally, we are going to discuss what are the pros and cons of performance based pay, right. Now, if you look at the arguments that is given in favor is that yes, it is always good to reward those who are performing well compared to those who are not performing well, because in that way you will be able to discriminate between high performing employees and low performing employees, right. First point. Second point is that if you are linking performance with reward, it is motivating in nature, and this leads to higher performance provided the reward is perceived as valuable by the employees, right. Third point that is in favor, that is that if you are linking performance with pay, it gives a very clear signal to other who are not performing well that what is expected of them, what level of performance achievement would help them to achieve this kind of reward, right. So, you are also giving a clear signal to those who are not performing well, right. So, this is performance related pay and the arguments given in favor of that. Now, there are certain arguments that is given against, and many people say that pay is not a good motivator. Yes, I do agree that up to a certain level it motivates, but beyond that it does not motivate. Now, the question is that whether you are going for financial reward or non financial rewards. So, it is always good to use and go for more intrinsic and non financial rewards, because that is always motivating in nature. Okay. Similarly, if you are one person who is performing well and one who is not performing well, what actually happens? You are rewarding who is performing well, right. So, he is happy, but the other who is not performed well, he will not be happy, he will be demotivated, because you clearly differentiate between high performing employees and low performing employees. Similarly, it also discourages teamwork, right, because everybody would be concerned to improve his performance, because it is linked with the pay, right. Similarly, it also diverts, there is a divergence basically from managing staff performance properly, okay, because managers would be would have lot of problems to look at each and every individual, see how they are evaluated, what are the different performance standards, what are the rewards that is going to be valuable to them, okay, and how they are going to evaluate their performance, right. And it does not allow risk taking, because you know that if you take higher risk and you are not able to perform well, then what will happen, okay. And it undermines the intrinsic interest. it would undermine the intrinsic interest only if you follow extrinsic rewards, but if you follow intrinsic reward, it does not undermine it. So, it is always good to go for performance linked pay, whether you follow merit based pay, whether you go for individual incentives or group incentives or organizational wide incentives, okay, because that helps organization to motivate employees for better performance, and if you provide suitable rewards, then it is always good for the employees to perform well. Thank you very much.